welcome in everybody to another episode of the Brett Allan Show. I'm excited today about our conversation, as I am with every amazing individual we get to talk to. And today we are talking with actor, special effects guru. I mean, my God, I don't even know where to start. Award-winning individual, Carey Jones. Thank you for your time today, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Well, I mean, my God, I was doing research a couple weeks ago before we had a chance to start talking. And you've been in this business for a very long time and have been a part of some amazing projects: The Walking Dead, Mare of Easttown, Lovecraft Country, Watchmen, The Mutants, the Book of Boba Fett. When did you get bit by the bug and decide that this is an industry that you wanted to be a part of?
It happened pretty early, as far as I can remember, when I was, 6 years old. So it happened pretty early. It was, I would probably say, if I can remember earlier than that, it probably happened literally when I came out of the womb.
Yeah. So what was it about it that interested you and made you decide that you wanted to be a part of this? Because, I mean, you've, like a lot of people, you have a broad smattering of experience, but I think we'll get into the FX part of this, visual effects, here in a little bit, because that's the part that I find the most fascinating. Well, it's all fascinating to me, but when you knew this was something you wanted to do, what was it that interested you and made you decide that you wanted to pursue it?
It was creating. It was the idea of creating a world that somebody can get lost in. And that's still my allure even today. And I think that's the reason why people go see movies and watch TV, because it's escapism. It's a place that they can, their minds can go to, and takes them away from, whether it is taking them away from a life that they kind of need a break from, or if it's just allowing their minds to wander and explore things that maybe they don't have access to in their life. And that was it for me, when I was a kid, just growing up in the inner city, and just not having much of anything. It was a way for me to just allow my mind to kind of get lost, and just the illusion and the allure of, like, whatever it was, science fiction, drama, horror, everything. I mean, I was just a fan of it all, of movies in general, but my main kind of love was with, like, sci-fi and horror and things like that, like the Alfred Hitchcocks and of course, John Carpenter and Spielberg movies, and just everything as a kid, and of course George Lucas, and just the curiosity of wondering how it was done. I'm sitting there wide-eyed as a kid, staring at that screen, just mind blown, and I was just like, well, how did they do this? And it would just spark that curiosity. So I just had a need to feed that. I had a need to feed that curiosity as a kid. Voracious.
Yeah, and that's way before probably realizing that you could get paid to do this as well. I imagine it was probably, were you naturally curious? I mean, you said in certain, obviously for sci-fi and science fiction, but I have a 7-year-old, so this is why I'm asking. Did you read a lot of books? Did you find yourself fascinated that way first? Or was it more like when you started seeing things on film and television, really, that sort of started feeding and ciphering that into your personality and going, okay, I really
Well,
want to get my hands on this in a tactile way?
yeah. Well, I mean, there wasn't a lot of publications back then. I mean, the ones that you could find were tucked away in the back corner of a library, and it really took someone that was really interested in it to find it. Because there was no internet, there was no schools, there was no, you know, meetups or forums or things like that of people that were into it. Usually when you ran into somebody that even knew what you were talking about, it was like, it was like finally you found someone that spoke the same language, and you tried to kind of latch onto that. But most of the time, nobody that I knew that was around me, family, friends alike, they thought I was they thought I was speaking a foreign language, and never I would, just talk about movies in general, and not to mention when I started talking about, how they were made and stuff that I was working on at home. It was just a, it was just, it was just my, mostly me just trying to find what I could in libraries, like I said. And every now and again they would play something on TV, like the making of. I remember seeing, like, there was a TV show called
Yes.
and
Oh,
about
what a great show that was. Oh my
which is
goodness.
still my favorite. In fact, I watch it every now and again today. I pull that series out every now and again and watch it. But there was, they would do like behind the scenes of like or different TV shows, or how they did stuff. And then when date myself, when they finally, you know you could finally buy like a VHS and have it in your house, I would literally, before I left with school, I put the tape in, hit record, and just record when I was at school. I'd leave for the house and just let it record. And
Yeah.
hopefully throughout the day, there'd be something on that channel that would be something of interest, and so, like I said, it was just trying to find anything and anywhere where I could find, how things were made. And then after that, it was just experimenting. It was me trying to figure it out. And like a lot of it was like, oh, I think they did it this way, or I think they did. And I would just go in my room and just try to make stuff. And then when I sometimes it would be disastrous, and I'd say, okay, that's obviously not how they did it. Sometimes it would kind of work, and I was like, okay, I figured it. Yeah. So it just started off with just that passion, trying to do it as a living. It never, it was never a thought of like, okay, this is what I want to do and how I want to make a living. It was more of like, it was more of like feeding my soul. It just helped
Sure.
me kind of survive, just to keep me out of trouble, keep me in the house, keep me busy. And I didn't know that it was a thing that I could potentially do until way later. But for the first many years of my life, it was just something that it was just my own sort of personal heaven for myself, to kind of like I said, just escape and occupy my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Well, I'm 47, soon to be 48. So I remember the VHS tapes, and I remember my parents would have shows that they recorded, and then I would record over them, and you had to break the tab off. So you could not
Break the tab, yeah. Yep, yep.
re-record
But
over.
see, the trick is that, we didn't have money to buy a lot of VHS blanks, so
Right.
we
Other.
would record over and over again. And yeah, like my parents or somebody would record something that they love. So so I want to record something. I hear like something was coming on that I needed to record, because I remember, I figured out who Dick Smith was, and then they were playing Amadeus on
Okay.
TV, and I wanted to record it because I wanted to pause and look at the makeups that he did. But I
Wow.
didn't have a blank VHS. So if you took like duct tape and then covered it
Yeah.
back over that tab, you can record on it again.
Yes.
So I would just
Yes.
grab tapes and, you know, just ones that they're never going to want this. They're never going to watch it. So I just take duct tape and cover up that tab and put it back in, and then record over stuff time and time again, to the point where you record over stuff and it stretches that tape so much that the quality just would go down, right? So it'd just be fuzzier. You get those like sort of lines going across it. And I still have those actually. A few years ago, I was talking to Greg Nicotero, and I told him like I had a bunch of these VHS tapes, and he hooked me up with this guy that literally just transferred those to digital. So now I have them just files on my desktop, where every now and again I'll click on
Wow.
them and watch them.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, I remember, just as a sidetrack here, rabbit trail, but my parents had recorded the episode of Who Shot JR, and they had not watched it yet. And I recorded over it with a David Copperfield magic special, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, it was great, and they were not happy. The other thing too, V, you mentioned that. I know that's a show. There was a sci-fi show that came out a few years ago, something involving V. I don't know if it was the same story or if it was a different part of that world, but there was like a version of that. But it was a great show. I remember because when they peeled their faces off and there was aliens underneath, and it was just
It was a remake. It
okay.
was a
So it was a
remake because
remake.
because you had two of the main characters, um, um, Mark Singer, and then they but they were playing different people in
Okay.
it. But so it was a remake.
Yeah. Well, again, I find what you do, Carey, fascinating, whether it's on the screen or behind the screen. And again, you've won an Emmy Award for some of your work. I'm very curious, when was your first break into the business? Because you obviously, I always like to say, an overnight success that's taken years to get where you are. But at what point in your career did you get that first, like, film set experience or television show experience where you were able to work on something um that you go, okay, I'm a fan of this and now I actually get to do it, like for real, as a job, so to speak.
Uh, let's see. Yeah, well, because honestly, for a while, it was just me putting my nose down and just working because I just wanted to
Sure.
work, and and I think I want to say the first sort of show that was a thing, back then was Baywatch. I did like this. I worked on it was like a sea lion or something like that because they rescue a sea lion. It's like and they pull it out of the ocean and they put it on, the little stretcher and carry it out of the water. But I mean, I worked on stuff before that, but that at the time was probably like, a show that I probably told people that I worked on because at the time it was like everybody watched Baywatch. And
Yes.
then,
Correct.
so yeah, Baywatch. And then I think I did like, I worked on like Batman and Robin, one of the Batman films. And slowly but surely, projects started to trickle in. But every single project that I've worked on, obviously I hold dear because I learned something from it in some way, shape, or form. Whether it was somebody that I met, somebody that something that I hadn't done before personally. It's been done, but me personally, I hadn't done it before. And I'm all about the challenge and about problem solving and using parts of my brain that I haven't used before. I mean, that's my big thing. I like things to be kind of challenging or and different and progress and move forward and move on. It's just, that's what I'm always striving for. And the Book of Boba Fett was definitely not the segue, but the Book of Boba Fett was definitely one of those things. Where I had done things. And I think that was the culmination of a lot of things that I did in front of and behind the camera.
Sure.
And, although Legacy Effects built all the effects and built the suit and everything, I still have an understanding of how it was made. So I think that helped me help them in terms of, being a little bit more sort of cautious, so that I wasn't making their jobs harder. And then at the same time, I think because I knew how stuff like that is built, I knew how to perform in it. Because a lot of times you put all that stuff on, and if you're not used to it, and you don't understand about the material and what it does, as a performer, as an actor, they feel restricted, and it takes them longer to kind of get used to it and make it feel like it's part of them. So I think that was like sort of the culmination of past roles I've done and other projects that I've worked on, which still today it's mind blowing that I was even part of it. And yet alone, such an iconic character, is
Yes.
just something that I still haven't come to grips with, and maybe I don't want to. I just want to stay humble about it. so
Well,
so
I mean, I think it's great. So let's talk about, that was a good segue. The Book of Boba Fett, which is huge. Again, you're playing this iconic Wookiee character that is just known throughout this universe. Let's talk about that because again, you said, you've done a lot of behind the scenes. You've done multiple projects where you've worked on suits and going back to the Predators. I mean, just the list goes on and on, a lot. Let's talk about Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett. How did that project come about for you? And as far as the opportunity to work behind the scenes as well as suiting up as this character and portraying, such an iconic individual.
First, I just want to say, like, Legacy Effects created the suit and
Yes.
everything. I didn't build anything, which actually I preferred in this case, because in the past I have been on shows where I've done double duty in that, and I think just being able to focus on the character and allowing them to do that part of it and not having to worry about that, I think it was a big deal for me, and I think that if it wasn't for Legacy and the team and the people on set, us kind of having that rapport, because I know those guys, I've known those guys for forever, and us being able to get along, and they understand me and I understand them. I think that made this project, for me anyways, a lot more tolerable. But so initially, as I worked with KMB Effects and Greg Nicotero, and I've worked with Robert Rodriguez before, and Greg and Robert are really good friends, and it was just like a happenstance phone call. I think they were just talking, and then they got on a subject of something, and Greg mentioned me and was like, "Hey, you remember Carey from Predators?" And Rob was like, "Oh yeah, okay, I do." And he's like, "Well, maybe I'll use them on this project." And I, at the time, I had no idea kind of specifically what it was or who it was. I would just said yes. It's like and so yeah, Greg and him had a conversation, and a day or two later, a day later, Robert calls me, and he and I talk, and then we talked about Predators, and kind of the stuff that I did for that show, and then he was telling me kind of what I didn't even know it was Boba Fett. They were very very secretive. I
Well, I'm
personally
sure.
thought it was for I don't know, either another Star Wars show, maybe Mandalorian. I had no idea, because they're secretive. They never said it to me that it was Boba Fett. In fact, I didn't know it was even Boba Fett until like the first day of shooting, because things weren't coming together in my mind. Like the script said one thing, the call sheet said another thing, and then when I went to set, it looked like something else, and I was like, this has to be, it has to be that, So, and then I think, like, maybe, like I said, my second or third day on set, I just straight up asked somebody, I was like, "Listen, you can at least tell me, is this Boba Fett?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Like, okay. So I didn't know until I was on set, and I didn't know that the character was Krrsantan until I tried on. I did my first fitting at Legacy, because again, they didn't tell me what the character name was. They just said, finally, I was told that it's a Wookiee, and it's like, it's a Wookiee, and he's like always fighting, always pissed off, always has a chip on his
Yeah.
shoulder, and I'm like, well, it doesn't sound like Chewbacca, or maybe it is Chewbacca, and something went down, and maybe it's they're a part of his life that we don't know. I don't know. And but all I knew was that he'd be angry and fighting all the time. So I just started to train. I just started to work out and train, knowing that it might be more intense in that way. And then when it finally, like I said, finally when I went to Legacy and had my first fitting, and I saw the head and everything, I was like, okay, that's not Chewbacca. I don't know who that is. And then someone told me his name, and in the moment I got his name after that fitting, I looked him up, and I was like, oh, holy crap! Like, this guy he's a thing. He's a dude, right? I mean, he's like a real sort of canon in the Star Wars sort of history, and so then
Yeah.
I just started looking at all the comics and graphic novels, and I even hit up fan pages and theories and everything I could possibly find to see kind of what this dude was about, and his backstory, and why he was and what he was, and then yeah, so and then finally that went on for like a month or two, and I had plenty of time to sort of work with Legacy and put the suit on and kind of stare in the mirror and do certain things and figure out what looked right, what didn't look right, what felt right, with all that. And then I had like a first fitting with Robert, and kind of showed him what I was thinking about and working on, and then he and I kind of worked through a few things, and then after that it was showtime.
I love it, and such a great show. And I could see how it might be kind of hard to figure out. Is it Boba Fett? Is it Mandalorian? Like, because those universes are so big and broad. They can kind of put characters in and wherever they want and keep it canon. But
Yeah, and they're intertwining stories, which I kind of like, because then you
yeah,
get invested in both shows, right? Because to know what's going on in one, you kind of have to look at the other. You know what I mean? Like one story kind of takes you into the other, and back and back. And so I actually like that. I like how it's weaved together like that, and which I believe is done purposefully, and I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just fantastic. And my son and I love to watch all of these because, I think like outside of the major motion pictures, when Disney Plus first started talking about creating these stories and really sort of expanding on the universes, it made a lot of fans very happy. And now, of course, they have this Star Wars cruiser in Florida that you can spend 2 nights on and really get immersive into this universe. I mean, how fortunate you are, my friend, to just be a part of such like a part of pop culture, but bigger than that, just these crazy worlds, that exist. And excited to see, what happens with this and sort of the future. One last question, and I always like to ask because I find everybody's journey as an actor and performer different, but was there ever a piece of advice, Carey, that you were given throughout the trajectory of your career, or maybe before, that has stood with you and sort of kept you motivated through this entire process?
I mean, not necessarily direct advice. I think for me, it was, I mean, one person I would have to say, if I had to choose, a lot. Okay, so there's two parts to this answer. One part is that I've been fortunate enough to just be around people that have shown me, just by proxy, just by me being near them and being friends, that show me kind of a pathway as to how to, how to work hard, and how to deal with people in terms of business, and how to weave your way into things, and kind of move forward. And I would say, Greg Nicotero is definitely one of them. Just through osmosis, and just being near the guy and just seeing kind of what he's done,
Mm-hmm.
it has been motivating. And I'm very much motivated by other people's success and what they can achieve, and it's been my pleasure just to kind of be near him and a fly on the wall to see where he's gone, and just kind of learn from that. And also too, when I worked for Stan Winston, he I worked in his shop, and I very much kind of admire what he's achieved in his career, because he turned something that was an art into a business, into a
Mm-hmm.
giant business, and that still, parts of that is still carrying on today, and after his passing. And so, yeah, I met with him, and I was just like, listen, it's like now that I'm seeing kind of the possibilities, like I kind of want to be kind of where you are in terms of success. And he after making a joke, he actually just told me, he said, listen, just keep doing what you're doing, just keep working hard. He said, I noticed that you hustle and you work, just keep doing that. And that's all he told me. And honestly, that's all I do. I just kind of, you just trying to keep pushing. Sometimes you don't need to know necessarily where you're going. You just have to go. Right. And then
Wow.
that's just what I've been doing. Just got to go, So there's been times where I know specifically kind of where I want to go. And other times I have no clue. And I'm like, all right, this is just one of those minutes where I just got to work. I just got to work my ass off, and then something will pop in, something will happen. So I've always said that, sometimes if you don't necessarily know where you're going, you just got to go. Just got to go, and eventually you'll see where, you'll see that light. You'll see kind of what you're aiming towards eventually. You know what I mean? Because sometimes people are sort of kind of stalled out by trying to set that goal, or they
Mm-hmm.
set the goal too high and they think, okay, you know what, it's too high, so I'm never going to get started. But But there's sometimes where I don't have a goal. I just know I want to go somewhere. I don't really know what that goal is. So I just literally, I'm just like, all right, let's just go. And eventually, I'm like, oh, okay, I know what I want to do now, or okay, I know what's going to happen now. And it's just hard work. It's just constant hard work.
I love it. Great advice to live by. Sometimes analysis can lead to paralysis if we just think too much about things, and
Oh, for sure.
we will never
100%.
get anywhere. I mean, I wouldn't have started this podcast. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? I mean, it's like really anything in life, but I think your life is truly a testimony, and your success, as I see it, is just doing it. You know what I'm saying? And whether or not you're getting paid for it or not, that can't be a driving factor in your process
100%, 100%. And
because
it never, and that's
otherwise,
the thing. It never was for me. Even today, I
yeah.
mean, there's times where I'll do work and then like it's like someone say, "Hey, did you ever get paid for that?" It's like, "Oh crap!" It's like, okay, and then I,
You're like, oh, actually, no,
retroactively
I
go
didn't.
back and say, and sometimes I just don't. I'm like, okay, what I got out of this is more than that check that I could have gotten because I met this person, or now I got that on my resume, or now, so it's not always about the necessarily getting that cash in that moment. I mean, obviously we all need money to live, but sometimes what you get from that, out of that experience is better what you could have gotten monetarily. So
Yeah.
right away when I agree to do something, or I agree to do it, money is never my first question. There are people that do that. You say, "Hey, can you do this? How much are you going to pay me?" Usually when someone says, "Hey, can you do this?" I think about, okay, what is it going to get me professionally? Like, who am I going to meet? Like, what is this going to lead
Yeah.
to? And then usually before I even ask him for, I say yes. If it means that it's going to lead to something, and I say yes. And way down the line, it's like, wait, I should probably talk about, hey, what I'm going to get paid for this, probably, because it's never, because that was never my first question. I mean, luckily, it's worked out for me. I do pretty well, but yeah, it has to be that deep passion. It has to be that thing where if you were not doing it, you would not be alive to, quote unquote. You know what I'm saying? It has to drive you to the core in that way. It can't just be, and listen, people are driven by money, which is fine, and sometimes they achieve it. But I think sometimes when that's the only goal, those people tend not to be happy.
Yeah.
Because it's all about the money and not about the passion for what they truly, or why they're doing it. But yeah, I mean, that would be the extension to that advice.
I love it. Well, everybody, please watch the Book of Boba Fett now on Disney Plus with Carey Jones as Krrsantan and all the other amazing projects he's been a part of. Just, I mean, some iconic history with film, television, and sci-fi. I mean, just a lot. Carey, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, bro. I really appreciate you, man, and love the show, man.